All right. Well, today we're going to be talking about getting up and running with Mylio Photos 22.1. So this is our most recent update that we put out into the wild a couple of weeks ago. Hopefully you've had a chance to run your updates and play around with some of the new features. There's a lot to look at. So what we'd like to do today is answer your questions and make sure you know about some of these new features and how to use them and integrate them into your daily lives using Mylio Photos. There's pretty spectacular. So what I'm going to do is just jump right into the program and show you how they work. So let's start with me sharing my screen. All right, and get a couple of things out of the way here. And before we jump in too far, I want to introduce myself. My name is Angela Andrieux. I'm a product evangelist for Mylio Photos, and I am also a fine art photographer. So I am here using the software to organize my massive photo library. And this brings in things from my things I capture with my big camera. I have a mirrorless Canon camera that I capture my fine art work with. I have an iPhone. I have a little pocket Sony. And what I love about Mylio Photos is it brings all of my images from all of these different sources into a single library that can then be viewed on every single device that I have. It's pretty powerful stuff, and it's really changed the way that I work with my photos. For just a quick example, I was sitting around with some friends the other evening, and one of my friends was saying, hey, I've never seen a great picture from this location. And I was like, give me a second. I was able to pull up a picture from that spot on my iPad, which I was sitting there with, and show him. And he's like, well, I've never seen that one before. So it's pretty fun to be able to get to all of your images, no matter where you're at and which device you have with you. So let me make sure I can see all of the Q&A. So if you have specific questions, the Q&A is a great place to post those. That lets me keep track of your questions and make sure that those get answered. I'm also going to be keeping an eye on the chat, so please feel free to post there as well. It's just a little easier for me to lose track of what is going on in the chat. So good to see everybody. Now let's go ahead and get started. So hopefully you guys can all see my screen. And I just have a quick cell phone snap from the other night that I captured from my friend's house. The sunset was quite beautiful. So as you're looking at this particular screen, one thing you might notice is there's a new icon up in the upper right corner. And this is called Photo Explorer. So this is one of our new features that uses the GPS information that's built into your camera. So whether you're shooting this with a smartphone or any other camera that has GPS information, or maybe you've added some GPS information manually in Mylio, you can use this to explore more about this photo. So if you choose Explore Location on a map, what that's going to do is it's going to show you in the map view right in Mylio Photos, which that's pretty cool. But I'm going to go ahead and click back to my All Photos view, go back to this image. And if I click on Explore Location on the web, what this is going to do is launch my browser with whichever default browser I'm using, whichever default map. And you can choose your map service when you first use this program, and you can also change it in the settings. And it's going to show me directly on the map where I was when I took this picture. Now, if I took this picture in a busy downtown neighborhood, maybe right outside of a restaurant where I had a great meal, and I go, you know what? I know I was in this beautiful place when I had this great meal. I can go find that photo and I can find exactly where that restaurant was. I would be able to get directions. I might be able to call the restaurant, all sorts of things. Let me get back to information about this photo. And so it really expands what you can do with your photos while you're on the go. So right now I'm showing this to you on my laptop, but it also works when you're on your cell phone. So it's incredibly helpful to be able to get through and learn more about your pictures. All right, so that's one of the new features. Another one that I really love is that we've added some different flags and different ways to rate your photos. So if you go into the rating and tagging icon here, and before I get too much further, let me turn on my cursor highlighter here so you guys can see a little bit better what I'm doing, is we now have, in addition to our pick flag, we have a reject flag. And there's a few different ways you can use these, but for me, the way I look at it is picks are ones that I want to work on more, or maybe my favorites, kind of think of it like a little heart button. And the rejects are ones that I'm most likely going to want to delete. And there's going to be a lot of information or a lot of pictures that don't get either rating. As I go through my images, I like to go ahead and, let's say, take a look at this image. I'll say that's a pick. This one, maybe not as good. I want to mark that as a reject. And what I'm doing is I'm using keyboard shortcuts. So when you're using picks and rejects on a computer, you can use the P key for a pick and the X key for a reject. If you've ever used something like Lightroom, it should be pretty familiar because it's the same keyboard shortcuts they use for their flags. So it's very, very helpful. Let's see here. Marco says, Mylio takes up a lot of space on my MacBook Pro hard drive. Do I have to have all of it on my hard drive? Marcos, no, you absolutely do not. What I would recommend is adding an external drive as a vault, and that's where most of your pictures are going to reside in their original format. So let me give you a look at my setup here. I'm going to go to Dashboard, into Devices, and you can see here's the laptop that I'm working on. If I go and click on this device card and go down to Device Quality, you'll notice that it's auto-optimized. So what's happening here is Mylio is looking at how much I'm accessing certain pictures, what I'm working with the most, and it makes sure to have a highest quality version of that available for me when I need it. If that high quality version isn't on my local drive, it can easily grab that from my external drives that are connected. So I don't have to have everything on my computer. If you go down here to device storage, you can see that Mylio is only taking up 126 gigs on this computer. There's a lot of other stuff on this computer besides Mylio, and then there's room that Mylio can grow. If you find that Mylio is taking up too much space, you can adjust the minimum free space. So you can tell Mylio, I want you to not auto manage this for me. And I want to make sure you leave, 332 gigabytes or whatever you set that threshold at. You want to make sure there's at least that much free space. So you can control how much free space Mylio has and how much it can use. And then just make sure that you're set on device quality here as auto optimized. If you change this, click apply changes, and that'll make sure that goes into effect. If you had it on Vault previously and you go to auto optimized, what I would recommend doing is going then down to the bottom here and choosing clear cache. And that's going to clear up anything on your computer that Mylio doesn't need, as long as it's backed up somewhere else. So let's take a look at adding an external drive really quick, because that's what's really going to help make you have space available on your computer. So I'm going to go down and take a look here at my other devices. So you'll see I have this computer, I have another MacBook Pro, I have my iPad and my iPhone here, and then I have some external drives. So I have this 8 terabyte vault, which is just an external drive that sits here on my desk. And this is a repository of everything in my Mylio Photos library. So this allows me to free up the space, keep my information on that drive, and be able to have my computer be auto-optimized. So again, if we go here to device quality for this drive, you'll notice this is set to a vault, and my library is taking up 2.447 terabytes, as opposed to the 126 gigabytes that are on my laptop. So this is what really saves me space, is having an external vault that stores everything, and then Mylio can access it as needed. So in order to get to things that are on your vault, you'll just want to make sure that vault is plugged in when Mylio is running, and everything should be great. So hopefully that answers your question, Marcus. All right. And if there's any other questions, please feel free to pop those into the Q&A and I'll get those answered for you. So let's talk a little bit more about rating and tagging images, because there's a few other things that we added to this version that fall into that category. So one is going to be, like I said, we have those pix and reject flags. We also have a new mode called quick review. So what I'm going to do is go to a folder, and I'm going to choose one of my main folders here. You'll see that I have everything organized by year, and I'm going to go down to 2021. Now, I know in 2021, I took a lot of pictures, some of them rapid fire, of birds, of race cars, of a lot of different things. And there are images in there that are all very similar. And I just want to quickly look through them to see which ones I want to keep, and which ones I want to get rid of. So let's go ahead and go down to this Lake Murray folder. And you'll see that I was out here photographing some baby geese, which is a lot of fun. Let me take a look here and see about the chat. Awesome. All right, looks like Rich might be joining us right now. That's great. Hey, Rich, are you logged in?
I'll be there in just 1 second.
All right, sounds good. All right, so let's take a look at quick review mode. So I've got these images that I want to kind of cull down and see which ones I want to keep, which ones are worth keeping, and which ones I want to get rid of. So we talked before about using those pick and reject flags. Using this in quick review mode works even better on a mobile device, but I'm going to show you right now on a computer. I'm going to click on the More menu, go down to quick review, and you'll see that we have now a view that clears out a lot of the distractions. It hides those side panels, it hides all the other tools, and really lets you focus in on your images. Down here at the bottom, the X will let me exit this mode. You can also hit the escape key if you want to get back to regular Mylio. Here's your pick and reject flags. And you also have star ratings. And when you're on a computer, this is where your keyboard shortcuts really come in handy and allows you to move through these pretty quickly. So I can just use my arrow keys to go to the next picture if I don't want to add any rating. But let's say, I like this one a little bit better than that. So I'm going to go ahead and flag this first one as a pick. This next one I'm going to ignore. That one's almost the same. I'm going to go ahead and hit that one as an X, make that a reject. And I can quickly move through a group of photos to decide which ones are my best and which ones I need to maybe throw out and it's not worth keeping. So this is a great way to whittle down your library and just find your best photos. Now, we also have another mode called declutter. And this kind of works similarly, but in a little bit more powerful way in that it groups together those similar photos. So right now we're looking at an entire folder.
Before we leave that, Angela, do you want to do the mobile version of this too?
Sure, we can do that.
Okay, I've got that shared. I could share that.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, great. Let me just go ahead and take over the screen, and hello and welcome, everyone. Apologies for the delay in logging in.
No worries, we got started.
Great. So you can see my iPad?
I don't see it yet, but let me stop sharing mine. Nope, not seeing yours.
How about now?
Yep, we got it.
Great. Okay. So Angela, you were just showing quick review mode, which obviously works great at a computer, but it's really optimized for touch devices, which is a lot of fun because it just makes it easy to switch to different places. So for example, a lot of times I want to go through and clean up my camera roll. So I'll just drop on into my iPhone. And one of the nice things about touch is that Mylio is very responsive. As you can see here, you can, for example, change the size of those thumbnails. While we're at it, a lot of folks don't know about Flutter, which has been there for a while, but on a touch device, you can fly right through the pictures that are in a particular area and see them. If you're on a desktop, you can also do that using a mouse with the scroll wheel. But I could drop right in here, and I'm just going to view this as media rather than containers. And I want to do just a little bit of cleanup. So I'll touch into quick review mode. Now, Angela, you already talked about the touch-driven, about the different rankings, right? Like stars and flags and what they mean.
Yeah, we went into that already.
Perfect. So while I'm here, when I'm in quick review mode, I'm in a dedicated mode just for rating. So if I swipe to the right, that's going to be flagged as a keeper. And if I swipe to the left, that's going to be marked as a reject, for example, like that. And when you mark something as a reject, it actually dims it. And depending upon your settings, it might hide it from view. So this makes it very easy to go through. So for example, not a great facial expression for the holiday Christmas card. So I'm just going to swipe to the left to leave that one behind. And she's not doing much better there either. But now we're getting back to business here. So I could just swipe to the right and mark those. Now, the whole idea with quick review mode is that it's meant to be quick. So that's what those gestures are for. You don't overthink it. The benefit of flags is that you're just making a yes or no decision if you want to keep something or get rid of it, and then it auto advances. Now, it's up to you. If you don't want those hidden, you can find them here under the drop-down menu, and you'll see a little preference for show rejected photos. If that's turned on, rejects are just grayed out, as Angela showed you before, but just note that you could turn that on or off. We are going to be releasing a performance update here in a couple of days that's going to speed that up. If you're seeing some slowness when switching tabs, you might want to not hide the rejects for now and just leave them grayed out, but we'll be dropping an update that for very soon. And this is just great for a way to clean things up. So I like to drop into it and just go to that quick review mode so I can mark the problem shots and just quickly fly through. Nice thumb in the frame there, not so good. There we go. But we're getting back to business. And this way, you just don't have to overthink it. Or if you prefer, you can always skip, move forward. And then when you get to something, you can use those gestures. If you're feeling a bit more reflective, you can drag up and down on the screen, and that's going to allow you to actually change the star rating, and then it will auto advance. So this is just a dedicated mode to make it easy to pick those best shots. And if you prefer flags or stars, you've got either one at your fingertips. All right, Angela, you want to take it back and show what you were going to show next?
Sure. These are some of your daughter's pictures, though, from that light painting exercise you did, right?
Yeah, she was having fun. They're just a little bit more abstract. So just a
I
little
like
family
them. They are
photography
very
fun.
fun. All right. So let's take a look at if you want to dig in and start to clean up images that are similar. So you can use quick review mode to do that, but there's actually a dedicated place where it can group them together into sets that actually makes it even easier. So I'm going to escape out of quick review here. I can hit the X or hit the escape key on my keyboard. And then I'm going to go up to organize and choose find similar photos. And then I'm going to go ahead and filter this down to where I'm looking at just that one specific folder. So when you enter this mode, it's going to walk you through a few steps that you can read. And I highly do recommend that you read these at first time you're using it. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and hit that X. And what I want to do is go up to the filter. And I'm going to choose a specific folder to do this with. I'm going to choose a filtered folder. And I know that we were looking at that May 2 Lake Murray. So I'm going to choose select, and that's going to filter my results just to the specific folder. And you'll see that it's already automatically grouped some of these images together. I can change what's grouped by determining how long of a time period between the time those photos were shot. So if you're using burst mode on your camera, chances are you're clicking off anywhere from like 5 to, I don't know, 20 different shots for any given time that you're sitting down and holding on the shutter for a second. So if you're one that might sit there with the shutter just randomly firing off for a few seconds, I would say to take this between 5 and 6 seconds gives you a really nice group and groups together those very similar shots. So let's take a look here at this first group. We have 4 images that are all very similar. And I'm going to click on that first one, and I can use my arrow keys to take a look and see if any of these are worth keeping to begin with. None of these are great, so I'm going to mark them to delete. And what I can do is use the space bar on my keyboard, and I can just move through these and hit that space bar and decide if I want to keep any of these photos. None of them are great, so I'm going to mark them all to delete. I can then just hit my arrow keys, and when I get to that last one, it'll jump to the next set, and then I can go through and evaluate that next set of images. So that one's all right. I like that one too. That one's not too bad. It needs a crop. But those first few, these are a bit dark. So again, I'm going to mark these ones to delete. Now you can go through these sequentially and move through them very fast. I tend to be a little bit more contemplative as I move through these because I'm looking for sharpness and detail and exposure, but whatever makes the most sense to you. So the ones that Rich just showed us with his family, you might be looking at expression. So you can see at a glance very quickly, that maybe your child's expression, maybe they're just being a little too goofy and that's not a picture that you want to keep, or, you see that maybe your wife was, making a face and, she's really going to hate that photo. So maybe that's the one you want to get rid of. It's
And
totally
when you're
up
in
to
this
you.
view, Angela, you can also press the Z key if you want to zoom in. It should work,
Yes.
I think. So
Yes.
that allows you to check focus really quick and zoom really quick to check a detail. And then you could press it to go out. And while you're in this mode, you can still use the regular keyboard shortcuts. 1 through 5 is going to be your star ratings. And then 6 through 0 are going to be your color labels. And then you can use P for pick and X for reject if you prefer to use flags. So some people prefer to do this a different way. They don't want to actually mark them here, but they just want to go ahead and use this to rake things, and then they'll do cleanup. But there's lots of ways of doing cleanup. Angela, did you also mention how flags have their own dedicated cleanup mode?
I have not yet.
Okay.
I have not. So
When
that
we're
is
done with
great
this, we
to
can show that
mention.
off.
Yep. Let's go through and do one more set. And that way I can actually make this time productive and clean up my own library while I'm doing this demo. Maybe
we'll
I'm
be
not
adding,
going.
in the update that's coming very soon, we are going to add the ability that if you're already in a folder, it'll open up with that folder applied as a filter. So you can narrow the declutter tool down. That was actually Angela's good idea. So it'll be dropping in.
Awesome. Glad to hear that. All right. So here, I'm going to take a look here at just 2 more photos. These were a set. This one, you can see the bird is definitely out of the frame. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the space bar to clean that up. I'm also going to mark that as a reject, and you'll see that it grays it out. And if I had my settings set to hide those, this would actually just hide it from view altogether. Yep. So I'm going to go to this one. This one's also not a great shot. Their wings are intersecting and it's very underexposed. So I'm going to mark that one to delete. Now we can go back to this view and I can choose to delete these images that I've marked with the red check, or I can move them outside of my Mylio library. So that's an interesting decision to have to make. If they're ones that you know you do not want to have anymore, that you know you want to throw them in the trash, delete checked is a great way to go. And what that does is it moves them to your system trash, and you can still put them back at that point. They're not permanently gone from your entire system, but they are gone from Mylio. Once you empty the trash on your computer, then they are permanently deleted. Now, if you don't want to risk that, if you think that you might still want these photos at some point in the future, you can also use move checked, and that's going to move them outside of your Mylio library folder and put them into a separate place on your hard drive that you choose, so you can revisit them later if you want to. For these ones that I've checked, I know I don't need them, so I'm going to just hit delete checked, and you'll see it's going to tell you how many files you're deleting, how much space you're saving by doing this. So I'm going to go ahead and hit delete files, and that's cleaned up my library quite a bit. Now, I'm going to go ahead and clear out of this folder, or clear out of that filter, and hit the back button here to look at my folder. You'll see that I have one image here that I also marked as a reject. Now, if you've gone through and you've marked images as rejects, you can clean those up quite easily as well by going up to organize and choosing delete rejected photos. What this is going to do is, again, it's going to move all of those rejected photos to your system trash. So this is, again, meant to be a permanent change and permanently delete them. If you want to review which images are flagged as rejects, that's pretty easy as well. You can go up to the filters, choose flag, select that reject flag, and that's going to show you all of those images that you've flagged as rejects. Once you've done that and you go, yep, those can go, then you can go up to organize, choose delete rejected photos. It'll ask if you want to permanently delete them. So we are very careful when you're deleting media, because we want you to be very sure. So in this case, I'm going to hit delete, and that's going to clean up those 2 additional files from my computer. So then I can clear out the filter, close the filter tool, and there you have it. I've actually saved a bit of hard drive space just during this demo. So it's very easy and a great way to just tidy up your library and really focus in on your best images.
Excellent. So let me summarize a couple things, Angela, for what you covered there so that everyone can cement this, and for those watching the replay. So it's a really big update. We actually have more new benefits in this release than we did in the summer release. The team's been working very hard since the summer on getting these new features done. So you learned about declutter in quick review mode. Quick review mode works great on the actual touch devices, but you can use the keyboard shortcuts when you're using the rest. We added the reject flags and dimming and the touch-based ratings. We'll be shipping an update if you want to turn those touch-based ratings off outside of quick review. And Angela just showed you the cleanup rejects. We're going to be talking about other things today here too. You're going to see just some increased performance, some new editing tools, also additional methods for importing and exporting, and some overall usability type changes that were dropped in. So I hope you guys enjoyed that tool for cleaning up a library. One of the things I like to point out is if you're working on a tablet and Mylio is syncing, you can actually do this remotely or sitting on the couch. I was doing a bunch of photo tagging earlier today. I finally got caught up on all my people tagging. And when I was done, about 10 minutes later, all of my devices were in sync. And that was just amazing to me that, and if you ever see my dashboard, you'll see there's about 15 devices. So I was very happy with all that syncing. So these reject flags, don't overthink them. It's a simple yes or no, and it's up to you if you hide them. One thing of note that they do clear out your stars. So by IPTC standards, that is a -1 as a reject, as a rating. Did you already go over that, Angela, that change?
No, I did not mention that little thing.
Okay. So according to IPTC standards, which is the group that runs metadata, you cannot have a reject file have anything other than a -1 stars. So it actually clears the ratings out. There's a couple of tools out there that mix this up a little bit, but if you use Photoshop or Bridge, you'll see that Adobe does that, but in Lightroom, they do let you have a rejected file with 5 stars, which is a little bit confusing. Okay. Do you have to activate this update? When you launch the program, it'll have suggested that you update. So normally when you run Marcos, you'll see a request to update the software when you launch, and it will download in the background and then usually relaunch and you'll have it. So you can always check that by going under the help menu and choose About Mylio. and you'll see version 22.1, which lets you know that you have update 1. Okay, so easy enough. And as Angela said, that delete rejected photos, super useful. I love that it respects the folder that you're in or the view that you're in, so you don't get overly aggressive with your cleanup. So make sure you read those boxes though. When you're using the rejected photos, one little bit for those of you here, some folks have reported some performance hits when hiding rejected photos. So if that's the case, just turn show rejected photos on. We have an update that's dropping in a few days that will increase that performance if you like to keep them hidden. You'll notice that when switching tabs, usually when it has to recalculate. So on the quick review, very simple. Besides swiping left and right, Angela, do you remember the other gestures that they could use as options?
Absolutely. So you can swipe up and down to use those star ratings.
Yep.
So you can, like you said, swipe right to mark it as a pick, swipe left to add it, make it a reject. And if you want to get granular, swipe up or down to add a rating of 1 through 5.
And if you're more of the Instagram or Facebook crowd and swiping seems out of place, you can double tap to mark something as a pick as well, and that will do that flag for you. So pretty simple.
I do like that though.
Yep. You got a choice. You got a choice there of what works for you. Okay. So one of the other things worth pointing out here is that these are about saving disk space. So both dedupe and declutter should be run. Duplicates will typically happen when you import files multiple times, or if for some reason your Mylio devices got out of sync, maybe you deleted on something but not the other, and it brings it back in. You could find occasionally that happens, but dedupe will definitely speed that up for you. And then declutter is more of a cleanup mechanism. It is very manual, and that's by design because you're making an aesthetic choice, but it automatically filters your library down to just what you want to see, which works out really nicely. All right, so pretty straightforward. On the declutter, I like to adjust the seconds there and make sure you use the aspect and match camera. That's going to narrow it down so you don't get any false clustering of those photos. And a lot of times it's the last shot in the first shot that almost always can be gotten rid of because you're either finding focus or you drop the camera towards the end. But there's all types of photography, everything from shooting children and pets to trying to do macro shots where, you're trying to stabilize. All right, so there are some other organization tools. Angela, what did we add as far as takeout goes or backup?
So we added Instagram backup. So if you have images that you have saved over the years to Instagram, posted, shared with friends and family, you can now pull those down. And what we've discovered is a lot of people, especially from their older cameras before they were, wise to backing up and keeping things, in multiple places and keeping those originals, the only copy of an image might be on your Facebook account or your Instagram account. So what we've done is made it easy for you to pull all those images down and save those copies that you might not have archived otherwise. And it's a
or
really
maybe
great
you
tool to find
posted
things you forgot about.
Maybe you posted directly to those sites, or you used an in-app effect or something else to modify. What I really like is that it actually comes in very organized. So one thing to note when you're using this, and that is that when you are going to take advantage of these, they're under the plus menu for add, and you'll just choose add from an online service. So Instagram, Facebook, Google Photo Library, and Flickr. The Google Photo Library requires you to file a request with Google, and they take their time about it. So be prepared, depending on how much you ask for it to take a few days to a week. So you'll want to keep an eye on your email for a file link that they send back to you. But then Mylio will let you import that, and that can include all sorts of things, not just Google Photos, but you can actually find other things in there. But once you've connected to Instagram and you log in, it's just going to pull it into the Mylio library folder by default, but you can get more specific if you want, including assigning your copyright info when you pull those pictures in. So one thing a lot of folks don't realize is that there's actually an IPTC card that you can set up in your settings over in the info panel, or you can import one of these. And this is where you have all of your copyright information. So when you import, you can actually assign copyright when you bring it in. And you can keep the file names and existing folder organization, or if you want, you can have them be grouped by year, for example, and have all your posts organized into subfolders by the years that you posted. Once you click copy, it'll just authorize and ask for permission, tell it that you allow, It'll take a second to think, and then it will bring them in. You can navigate back to your folders, and you'll see that in there as one of those options, and everything comes in. Generally speaking, it should be in the exact order of which you posted it. So I kind of like the fact that I can go back and see stories, like, for example, a whole series here that I posted of a family trip to the La Brea Tar Pits, or another series of pictures when we visited Disney World. I could see that those memories and perhaps reshare them or grab those images, and they're all there. Instagram will also pull down any video clips that you've posted, so you'll be able to grab those as well. And then, of course, we've had Facebook for a while, but I like to point out that if you use albums on Facebook, each of those becomes a subfolder. Remember, if you navigate to a folder that has a lot of subfolders, one useful option is to click on the More menu, and you could choose to see all the media in a folder, and that will temporarily collapse your folders and let you get a view of everything. Then you could take advantage of sorting by date or by ratings or other criteria, which is nice. This way, you could actually see like a linear progression of what you've posted if you want. And so you can go through and kind of see all the things you've shared, for example. All right, so pretty easy there on the social import. Another thing there is safe sharing. So Angela, why are some of the reasons to be concerned here when you're posting things to general email or social media, for example?
So depending on your settings in your export, there's a lot of information that can be embedded into a photo when you export it out of Mylio Photos. And that can include face tags. So if your kids' names are in those photos, that gets embedded into that information. The location that you took the photo. There's a lot of information there that you might not want publicly available, especially if you're sharing it online. It's one thing if you're sharing it with, your parents or maybe a cousin, but if you're putting it out there publicly, you probably don't want people to know your kids' names or where they play soccer every weekend or what school they go to. So Safe Share makes it possible for you to easily wipe all of that information. You just check the box for Safe Share, and it removes all of that personally identifiable metadata that is embedded in that picture. So it's all of that information that you added is still available in Mylio for your organizational purposes, but that copy that you share doesn't have any of it. So Safe Share is really powerful.
Yeah, and we'll be expanding it in the future. We're going to start doing things like searching libraries for extra information. Angela mentioned that idea of personally identifiable information. Hello, JC. One of the things that a lot of folks don't realize is if you just searched for things in your library, for example, password, you would notice that it's going to actually be able to find pictures that have the word password in the text. And so computer vision is really quite powerful. And right there it is. You could actually have screenshots and things that you captured. And normally this picture is completely dark, yet the computer is actually able to brighten it and bring out those details and see all that stuff. So it's really important as you think about things to try to remember that computers can see quite a bit of detail. And that means that those who are scraping the internet or who are looking for things that are posted in public viewable can actually lift quite a bit of information about you. So we always recommend that you take advantage of that safe share when you share publicly. It's going to remove all sorts of information that's embedded in the file by default. Besides that, remember too, if you do choose to store in the cloud, when you add a cloud device, we also offer the ability when you attach the cloud to tell it to encrypt the data so it cannot be viewed by anyone except you. No one can see it, even the Amazon or Google or OneDrive or any of the hosts that you use. We will also be shipping support for some additional hosting platforms, hopefully by the end of January. So you guys will see that. And I see, Michael, you asked a question. You saw that I did some searching there on a word. Currently, when you search for something, Mylio is looking at text, embedded information, tags, and keywords. What you're describing there is the ability to use what's typically referred to as computer vision or object and scene recognition. And I'm happy to report that that's something we are actively working on, and we should have that out later this winter. So you'll be able to type dog and search for dog, but that's not something that's currently in the public released version of Mylio, but something we've been working on for some time, and you'll see that soon. So I would suggest taking advantage of that safe share. All right, Angela, I'll let you lead here when it comes to editing. I know it's your favorite part, but we made some pretty big changes. We actually completely exposed a whole bunch of new tools, levels with color correction, a vignette tool. And I like to point out that we now have a full 16-bit workflow, which is perfect if you're going to be printing your photos. So when you print, you want to print in 16-bit. You don't want to use 8-bit files. You're going to get much better prints when you do that. And so we now support full 16-bit depth when you export things like TIFFs or PNGs. And we also support color spaces. So for example, ProPhoto RGB is perfect if you intend to keep editing your photos in another application. So I'll go ahead and let you share, Angela. I'm sure you've got some examples you'd like to share, and then I'll do a couple as well.
Sure. Let me go ahead and get an image pulled up here. And you know what? I'm in this folder that we were looking at, the baby geese. So we will just start there. All right. So when you come across an image that you want to do a quick edit on in Mylio Photos without having to use other software, all you have to do is open up the details panel here on the right. So if it's collapsed, you'll notice that's what it looks like, and you might not see that panel. All you have to do is open the panel and then choose edit, and you'll have all of these edit tools available to you. Now, if you find the film strip at the bottom to be distracting, you can always go up to the More menu and choose to hide the film strip. And that's just going to give you a little bit more screen real estate to work with your image. And from here, what I like to do is start with auto color. Now, auto color here in the presets corresponds to that new tool that we added called levels. And it helps you balance per channel color. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but it's a great way to get just a nice start on editing your image. You'll notice it brightened it up. It made the colors pop. And already this image looks a lot better. So I'm going to show you here before and after. That's pretty good. Now from here, if we want to crop this, get the composition a little bit better, I can go up to the crop tool. And for this one, I'm just going to pull in a little bit from the right, pull that a little bit tighter, maybe even pull in a little bit more here, really bring the focus to these little chicks, hit return on my keyboard, or I can hit done at the bottom of the screen, and now I've cropped my image. From here, I can go down and work a little bit more with my tone, maybe pull down, darken those highlights. So it's darkening the brightest areas of the image. And if I go to my shadows, that's going to brighten the darkest areas. So you'll see that's bringing in a little bit more detail here in the legs. Those are the dark areas. And I might add a little bit of clarity. And this is going to add some mid-tone contrast to kind of make those details pop. And that's looking pretty good. So there's the before and there's the after. I'm liking where this is going, and I just want to add a couple of extra things. So we can talk in a minute more about details. I just use this auto setting, which is the same one you're going to find up here at the auto color and in the presets. They all do the same thing. They're just different ways to get to it. But I'm going to go down to one of my new favorite tools here inside of Mylio Photos is we now have a vignette. And what a vignette does is it helps guide your eye to the subject in your photo. So if you take the amount slider and you move it to the right, it's going to make those edges white. For most things, this isn't something you're going to want to probably do often, but it's there if you want it. I typically like to bring that down to the left. And to start out, I'm going to bring that all the way down, all the way slammed, all the way to the left. And this shows me where that vignette is placed. Now we're going to lighten that here in a few minutes, but this is going to help me really tune in the placement of this vignette. I'm going to bring that size down smaller. I can adjust the shape here. So I think actually moving that right about there is good. Feather is going to let you choose how sharp the transition is between the light and dark area. So you'll notice I take that to the left. It's a very hard edge circle. Bring that up to the right. That gets to be a nice soft edge circle. So I'm going to pull that up pretty high. And you can even rotate this if you want to. Now in this case, I don't need to rotate for this image. So I'm going to double click on the handle, and that's going to reset it back to the default. So that's something you can do with almost every single slider in the edit section. If you make a change and you want to start over, just double click that slider and that resets it back to the default. So we go ahead and pull that back down. And now I'm going to choose subject. And I want to place this slightly off center to bring the eye right into those little goslings. And I can just move this around and click until I'm happy with that placement. So maybe right about there is good. And now I can finesse this by bringing my amount slider back And usually somewhere between 45 and 65 is the sweet spot, depending on how much you want to have those edges darkened. The thing you want to watch out for is you don't want anybody to say, hey, nice vignette. If they can see that you added a vignette, you probably went a little bit too strong. All you really want this to do is to guide the eye to your subject, but you don't want it to be dramatic darkening. Certainly that's a stylistic effect. If you really like that, feel free to go for it. But my personal choice is to keep that a little bit more natural. And then again, we can take here a look at the before and the after, and that's, I think, a pretty nice edit. What do you think,
Nice.
Rich?
I think it's well done. Do you mind if I show a few more things we added in the tools?
Yeah, go for it.
Great. So Angela showed you an example there of working with modern photos. I want to show you some older photos. Remember, Mylio Photos works great with scanned images. For example, when working with scans, remember, you can actually select all of those scans. Like I'm looking at these, and I know that these were not from August 30th. So for example, this is my wedding, and I can actually remember the day of my wedding and the date, so I should fix that. Remember, Mylio makes it easy that you can actually set it. Now, in this case, I don't know the exact time, so I'm just going to say all day, and I will assign the correct year and day. And so remember, Mylio does make this easy, so you can actually map these here very quickly and assign things like you need to, and then go in and set the date. And then when you do that, it will actually change the date on all of those pictures, and that actually sorts them correctly as well, which is cool. Now, in this case, these were scanned from negatives, so actual negative film. And one of the things that we've done is we've added support in the edit panel if you have negatives for inverting those. But when you invert film, it doesn't necessarily take it to a ready state, particularly if that film is faded. So Angela showed you the auto color button. When you look at film that's been scanned negatives, you'll see those channels are really all over the place. So what you would have to do by hand is drag each of those channels in and set the white and black point where the histograms rise, and then balance it. Or click the auto button, and we do all that work for you, making it very simple. And then you're still free to tweak the levels independently. We will actually be adding an auto tone here shortly to give you this type of adjustment, but that will refine the black and white point and the middle exposure there very easily. Once you've got that, remember, it's super simple to choose copy, and then you can select a range of photos that are similar and just choose paste. And so I'll just go down here and go back to the grid view. G will take me back to grid view. I can select all those and choose paste, and instantly get those edit settings renewed across all of those scanned images, which is great. But it's not just for scans. So if you've got scanned photos, here I have some images that I printed back in the days of film, and then I scanned in the negatives. You're going to see that auto color is still quite useful for bringing that out. And then the use of levels is a wonderful way just to bring in that black point and really balance the shot nicely to restore contrast to it. I really prefer that luminance levels adjustment rather than overdoing the black point slider up here. It's just a nice way to really refine that, and you can bring those in. And so you're going to see when working with scanned images that auto color can be quite helpful to just sort of get those in there. And then remember, there is noise reduction if you need it. This is particularly grainy shot here, some film that was very grainy. Let me jump forward to just a couple of others. I just want to show you a black and white example. Again, G is a great way to go back to the grid view. And you can use this auto button right here. So even though this is a black and white image, if you take a look, chances are you scanned it not as grayscale, but as RGB. So auto is still quite useful there, and will actually balance those out. And then with the levels adjustment, you can finesse the black point and that middle slider as needed to kind of bring that in, which works quite nicely. And if you're dealing with images where the black and white point seems off a little bit, there's even eyedroppers here. So you can sample click on something that should be black. Like I clicked on that shadow there, and now my departed, but very fondly remember back Black Labs here. We've got we've got Hannah and Becca here, are back to having proper color contrast there. And again, with that luminance slider, I can just balance that out nicely by moving that and just really finesse that. Again, just take that eyedropper and click on a pure shadow, and you're going to get the nice clean black point. Similarly, if you have a middle gray or a white, you can do that as well. So it's just wonderful that all of that is there. And again, that cool shortcut G will take you back to the grid view if you need to. So just some easy way when working with scanned photos. And remember, Mylio does in the info panel let you fully work with scanned photos, and you can tag these just like anything else. So if you need to, you can always come to an individual picture, go into the people tagging mode, and you can see that I've actually tagged these, even though they're not digital files, and still go in. And if you're dealing with any prints or things like that that have faded over time, using that luminance slider is a nice way just to clean up the black there and a little bit of noise. And then you can move that middle slider to open it up. And that tends to be a nice way just to deal with any of that little noise that might be creeping in. I think you'll find it a good cleanup tool. All right, so that's Levels, which I think is surprisingly powerful if you're not familiar with it. And I think it should become a part of most people's workflow. So Angela, were there any other adjustments before we talk about the handoff tools? Do you want to talk about?
I know, I think that pretty much covers what I would like to show inside Mylio Photos, but we also made it easier to work with external editors. So for a lot of people, the tools inside of Mylio Photos are going to be perfectly sufficient. But if you want to get more creative, Mylio Photos works with a variety of external editors, anything from Photoshop, Luminar Neo, Radiant Photo, On1, all of these different applications can be accessed from Mylio Photos as an external editor. So what we've done with this most recent update is make it easier to hand off files and let you choose how you want those files handed off. So Rich, do you want to go ahead and show an example?
Yeah, sure. So when we do this, you have a choice of sending the original file. And if you check prefer raw file, that will hand off the raw file if it's available. Or you could hand off a copy that has the Mylio edit. So it really just depends on what you want. So that copy with Mylio adjustments would be, maybe you want to use the lens correction that Mylio applied, or maybe you already did some basic edits and you want those handed off. So that's ultimately up to you. So let's say I was working here and I wanted to hand an image off for some further refinement. So let me come down here. And I'm just going to take a shot of this volcano and I want to tighten it up a little bit. So I've got that image selected. This is a good one here. And what I'm going to do is straighten it first inside of Mylio. So we were shooting from a boat. So I'm just going to choose the crop tool. C is an easy way to do that. And using my slider here, I can look there and get the level horizon. And I think I got that now. I'll call that good. And you can also set your cropping aspect ratio if need be. And let's just offset that there for rule of thirds a bit. There we go. And I'm just going to tighten up a little bit and press return. Well, since I've done those edits already, I want to preserve that when I hand it off. So from the photo menu, I can choose open with. And I'll see all the editors that I have, and I like photo editing tools. So I like to play with most of them. I'm going to hand off to this one here, and I'm going to choose to edit a copy with the Mylio adjustments. So I'm going to make a 16-bit file. I'm going to prefer a high-quality file, so TIFF works well. Our Adobe RGB is a nice color space that's good for editing, and you could share it directly to the web. Otherwise, you'll have to convert that. And I'm actually going to go in the middle here with a PNG file. So a PNG file is a cool compromise between TIFF and JPEG. So JPEGs are great for the web, and that's about it. They're terrible to edit with. They're small in disk space, but really a lot of compression. And every time you modify it or save it, it throws away more quality. TIFF are wonderful, very high quality files, excellent for printing, but they add up in space. So a 16-bit PNG is kind of the middle of the road. You get the better bit depth, but you get a much more optimized file size. So when I click continue here, it's going to generate that file and launch the application. And I can switch over to that application and I'll see that the file has opened up. Let me just go ahead and make that switch. It's launching here. So I'll give that a second to finish opening. And you can send one file or you could send multiple files, actually. It's up to you. Now, Angela, once it comes in, it's pretty simple. You can do any changes you want. In this case, I'm just going to use their depth tool to really richen the shadows and soften the light with diffusion. There we go. A little less contrast. And from the color section, I'm going to use their sky toning tool and just bring out the blues of the sky a little bit. Be gentle there. There we go. Good. And then I'll jump in to the color grading tab and I'm going to apply digital film stock. So there we go. And I'll just take a very soft film stock. Let's do something simple. There we go. Actually, I'm going to go a little vintage. So let's go here and do a soft one. There we go. And a little bit less. Good.
Nice.
And I'll apply a gentle vignette. And when I click save, that'll get written back to the exact same folder. I also have the option, if I want, to rename that file. And if I rename it as display, then that's the one that Mylio will show in the grid. So in this case, it'll write it as a new file, but it's going to drop that right back into the folder and Mylio will pick that up. And then I'm done. And sometimes you may find yourself wanting to merge two files together. So like in this case here, I've got two shots that are part 1 and part 2 of a volcano. So I can actually select those there. And looks to me like these all go together. And I'm just going to choose to open those as raw files, this time into Photoshop. And so I'll hand off the original and prefer the raw. It's going to take those and launch Photoshop. I'll just go ahead and minimize this. And I don't know if these will stitch, but I'm going to try. Looks like they're out of order here, but we'll see. We'll try merge to panorama. And let's see if it can make it. It's going to think. And it got some of that. Let's see. Yeah, not bad. Looks like I'm missing one part, but it did merge two of those together. So if I go hunting around for some more panoramas, I should be able to merge those together. But that's what you're seeing there, is that it's possible to actually hand off multiple files at once. And remember, inside of Mylio, you've got very powerful tools. So like if I go to my folder view and just type in that I want to filter here, I could say filter on a folder name and just start to search. And so you could find everything in there and narrow, and that's a great way. And we're going to be actually expanding this later, and you'll see that there's more options to find things, which is very cool. Or you could do a search here, same thing. And I could just type in the word pano. And you see that now in folder view, it found 39 panoramic folders. So these are ones that I built. And so I could drop into one of these and do the merge. So let's just take a look at this one here. There we go. And this looks to be some different shots. And so that's one. Let's take a look at another really quick. And this looks good here. We'll just do a simple one. I don't want to do a full 360. That's a little obsessive, but here we go. Photo merge. And I'll take a look at this basic pano. Yep, cool. Select, organize, photo. There we go. Open with Photoshop. And I'll edit the original, preferring the raw. That'll drop them into Camera Raw. At least it's supposed to. And then you could actually merge them. Or in this case, looks like those were all TIFFs, and that's fine. So I can still merge those too. I'll just say File, Automate, Photo Merge. And I can add all the open files, tell it to blend them together. And when I click OK, Photoshop's going to combine all of those pieces and make a new panorama for me that stitched them all together. Very simply here, I'm just going to flatten this, Command click to load, and I'll say select inverse to select the empty area. And I'll expand that a little bit. by 10 pixels. And now I'm just going to be lazy and say content aware fill. I'll let it analyze, come up with new pixels and click OK. There we go. It thinks, writes it. It's going to fill that in. There we go. Oops, I'll stop panning around and touch mouse. And then I could just save that right back into the folder on my computer. And I could just choose it. Now, in this case, I don't know where this exactly came from because Photoshop didn't remember, but we have a cool new option here called the Mylio inbox. Angela, you want to describe that?
Sure. So the Mylio inbox is a shortcut to make your life easier. What it does is it gives you a place in your favorites. So this works on Windows or on Mac, and you'll see it there in the favorites of your sidebar when you're saving images. So if you're in an application that doesn't remember which folder those images came from, you can simply click inbox, and that's a folder that's always watched by Mylio. And as soon as you save something to it, it's going to pop up in Mylio Photos.
Yeah, so I'll just go ahead and finish this file out, put a little pop of color, and close and save. And then I can close everything else here and just quit. And then Mylio will scan. And if we go to that top level folder in the inbox, it's going to locate things and it will drop it in there. See, it already made it. So there it is. So there's that file just waiting for me. And here's another cool tool. I can click here and say move. And in this case, I'll choose the move to folder tool. And I'll just search for the word pano. And it shows me all of those different panoramas that I made. And so I can see all of that stuff and very quickly move this to where it needs to go. So you can see there how easy that is to locate. So I'm just going to go and click. In this case, I'll click here and I see, yep, there's Red Rock. That's where I shot this. I see a bunch of other ones. And for now, I'm just going to go to the top level there. But you can see how easy it is to tell exactly where you are. And I'm going to put it in there in this case and click select, and it moves the file. So it's that simple to move things around. So that move to folder tool is really useful. You see there's a cool search tool there to move things and kind of browse. We're going to be adding that cool browser to the files tab very soon here, which will be a fun addition too. Angela, do you have some other external edits you want to show or anything you want to do here?
No, I think you covered the external editing pretty well. I use Photoshop, the Adobe Camera Raw like you do, and Radiant, and a few others. So there's a lot of great stuff you can do with editing. And we actually did a webinar a couple of weeks ago. I encourage you to go watch it if that's something that interests you, where Rich and I showed a lot of different options for editing your photos. Another fun thing you can do is editing on mobile. And this allows you to use any of the apps that you have on your phone or your tablet. For instance, I use Snapseed a lot. And what I can do is I can send a photo directly from Mylio to Snapseed, edit that, and I can send it directly back from Snapseed back to Mylio. Yeah. And that uses that inbox as well.
And if you don't have the full quality file, you could just tap and your mobile device will connect to one of your other computers or your vaults and download that full quality file and bring it into your system, which is very cool. So you can actually have it fetch it. Or if you are wanting to just work with what you have, you can actually use the Smart Preview, and that's fine too. And it'll make that connection and download the original. So that's a pretty cool way to work. In this case, let me go to a folder with some actual RAWs. I'm just going to navigate here rather than the iPhone. Actually, why don't I use that one, but I'll use the resolution I have. So I could just say export with available resolution, and this will bring up the ability to share. And then I can choose any app that I have on my system and easily navigate. Now, it looks like I'm being a little cranky here because I'm in the middle of an upgrade, but that's okay. Come on and think. It'll bring it up here in a second. And that's going to let me go ahead and then hand off to another tool. Angela, do you have your mobile device queued up as well?
I can queue it up real quick. I've got it here right next to me. So give me just a second.
Why don't you go ahead and do that? I managed to lock mine up here, so that's okay. I'll just do a quick refresh.
No worries.
Bring it back up. There we go. Yep. This is a bug that we're actually in the middle of fixing. I just managed to do it in front of you all live, which is lots of fun.
That's always great.
Yep, that's okay.
All right.
I reported that bug. You're ready?
I'm ready. Let me go ahead and get this shared.
The thing you want to do is download the original file first before you send it, and you won't hit that bug. But I'll do that while she's pulling one down here as well.
Give me just a second. It's thinking.
Yep.
There we go. All right. So let me make this a bit bigger. Get out of that. So what we're looking at here is Mylio Photos on my iPad. And what I want to do is edit this using an external editor. So the first thing I want to check is what quality do I want to send to that external editor? Do I want to send the CR3 file, which is a raw file from my Canon? Do I want to send a JPEG? Do I want to work with the Smart Preview? Typically, I want to work with the raw if it's available. So I'm going to go up to the More menu, go into Settings and into Export and Sharing. And this is going to dictate what quality of an image that I send to an external editor, or that I send to a text message or anything else. So since I want to edit, in this case, I'm going to choose Unmodified Original. And that's going to send my raw file or the best quality that it can get on this device. And just close out of that menu. And now I can go to the Share menu. And again, I'm going to choose Download, and that's going to download that from one of my local devices. And now I can choose Open In, and I can scroll and find an app that I want to use. So I'm going to choose More. And I'm going to go down to, let's see, in this instance, let's choose Snapseed. Snapseed's a really fun one. It's free. And this lets you tweak images in a lot of different ways. So it's got some great presets here on the side. You can go into the edit tools and try different edits. So let's choose Tune Image, and let's do a quick auto adjust. You can then go into the adjust tools, and let's take the ambiance. You can then scroll up and down. And once you have that there, you just scroll left to right to change those settings. And let's go back to contrast, add a little bit more contrast. Highlights, I'm going to darken down those highlights a little bit. That's looking pretty nice. I can then hit the check mark here. Let's do a couple of other things. Let's add drama. And I like the dark drama. This one's good, but it's a little strong. So then I can decrease that filter strength and then go ahead and decrease or increase the saturation. So I'm going to bring back some of that color. Ooh, I really like how that looks actually. And I can hit that check mark. And now those edits are ready to be sent back to Mylio Photos. From here, I can hit the Share button and you choose Share. It's applying all of those. And all I need to do here is go back and select Mylio Photos. And that's going to copy that back to Mylio and put it in my inbox. So now if I go switch back to Mylio, go to my folders, here I am in the inbox. That should pop up here in just a second. There we go. And now I have that edited version in Mylio Photos. If I go back to all photos where I started from and go back to my grid view, that edit in all photos is now right next to the original. It's so easy and so fun to edit this way. And this works beautifully on my phone too. So if I take a picture with my cell phone, or I have access to all these images, even in their raw quality on my phone, I can do the same kind of editing no matter which device I'm using or where I'm at. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And that Mylio inbox is now, it's always been a part of your library. It just was hidden. It was part of originally just the mobile devices, but now we've exposed it so all the platforms can see it. And we add that automatically to your sidebar on desktop, and it's already part of the Share menu on Android and iOS. So that's great. And remember, when you're working, you might find yourself without having all the files. So let me just go ahead here and switch to my tablet. So for example, here you see I'm working with a preview, and that's a smart preview. And the advantage of smart previews is that they're still raw files, which makes it really easy to do things like play with exposure, recover the highlights, lift up the shadows, etc. And as you're working with that, you see that it's the full responsiveness of the actual raw file. I really like that because it makes it much, much easier to deal with color balance issues if you don't have the right white balance, for example, which is really hard to fix on a JPEG. Now, I see that I'm working with the preview, but again, with a tap, I can switch over and download the original, and it's going to connect to my network and pull that down, and it will have that. And besides the ability to hand off to those external editors there when you tap the Share menu, remember, you also have the ability here to copy. And we're going to talk about copying on desktop in a moment, but copy is a simple way to just put that on your clipboard, and then you can switch apps. So let's say I wanted to send a new email. I could just go ahead and paste that message there, and it actually attached the raw file. And you can see that it put it right there on my clipboard. So that way, if I wanted to share that raw file, I could. Or if I was working here, let me go back to this. Let's say I wanted to switch and drop that in on a slide. So let's say I was giving a presentation. I'll just go ahead and use a basic theme here. And I could paste, and you see that it actually pasted the photo right into the slide, and I was able to move that. So that gives you some of that flexibility. But the real power here with copy and paste is going to be how it behaves on the desktop. So we significantly expanded its behavior. So now when you go to the share menu, you'll see system clipboard, and this will actually let you specify the file type that you're going to grab. Is it the raw file? Is it a JPEG, a PNG, or a TIFF, for example? You could specify the quality and the color space. So this makes it really simple. Like, let's say I wanted to grab a couple of pictures and I was giving a slideshow. I could actually grab those pictures here and just say, copy to my system clipboard as full quality JPEGs and click share. And then I can switch on over and let me just say, I wanted to drop these into this presentation. I'll scroll down here and choose paste. And what you'll see is that it dropped them right there on the slide at the quality that I specified. There's all those pictures, which is amazing. I could have jumped into Slack. I could have jumped into any application where I needed it. And that system clipboard on your desktop is a really fast and easy way to share pictures. And so that works really nicely now. And you could choose to copy the files by unmodified originals or the edited versions that you have. And that just works really nicely. Instead of having to export files and attach them or re-import them, it's just going to speed up that behavior quite a bit as you're moving around. Besides that copy and paste, Angela, though, I think that it's important to point out that we did expand all of those, and we also added support for some new cameras. So we expanded Fujifilm quite a bit, and we added some new files for Olympus as well. So if you're using any of those cameras, you'll find that we expanded support. So speaking of sharing, that share menu is really quite handy. Angela showed you it as a way on mobile devices to hand off to an editing app, but you can hand off to any app on your mobile device. So when you tap that, you can choose to scroll through different apps or type open in, and you're going to see a wide range of apps, which is pretty cool. So for example, once you choose the open in, you can see all sorts of files. And so if it can open a picture, it's going to be listed. So this means you could hand it off and do extra enhancement or add on to that very easily. Another thing we added, this one's a lot of fun.
We actually
Angela, you
talked
want to
about
show
this
this
at the
one?
very beginning.
Oh, did you?
That was
Okay.
the first thing that we talked about.
All right, then I won't go too deep into it. I think this is a lot of fun. So Photo Explorer is going to make it easy to do that. Did you show it on the desktop or on mobile?
On desktop. So if you want to show it on mobile, that'd be great.
Sure. So I prefer doing this on mobile because I think it's is where it's most powerful. It's going to make it easy to really share things quite nicely. So if you go to a picture that has metadata, which most things on your camera will, but you can also have manually tagged it, you might find yourself wanting to revisit something. So for example, I'm going to be traveling tomorrow, and I'm going to be hitting the road. And so what I can decide is that maybe I want to tap in and use a picture again. So for example, I'm going back to Atlanta tomorrow. And so I could find pictures that I've shared and I can go back there. So maybe I want to revisit something. You can see here how easy it is, to revisit a memory. I remember this park, for example, had a great view. This is my niece and my daughter, but I want to go back to that park to get a sunset. Well, I could choose to explore that location on the web, and it's going to open it up and allow me to see exactly where I was. And then I can get driving directions or get details. You might also find, for example, that you've got a really robust set of details about a picture. So let's go back here to this area, and I'm going to zoom in here. And I wanted to go back to get a shot that I remember taking. I drove up here, and I remember there's some really good pictures. but I don't remember how to exactly get there. And you see, as you zoom into the map, you get more and more details. So even if you're shooting on your real camera, I would suggest taking a picture with your phone so that you can capture that location with a timestamp. So then as you zoom in, you can get back to that view. So I want to come back here and get the sunrise. So again, I can tap, see that location on the web, and then I can get driving directions there, right? I could literally just tap and get driving directions. Now, I'm not going to drive from home. That would be a really long drive. But when I'm back out in Las Vegas this winter, I do plan to go back up there and see it. And speaking of that, you might find yourself wanting just to get back to maybe a great memory. It's not always about taking photographs. Maybe you just have a memory from a place you visited and you want to go back there. So as you zoom in here, you can start to see all the places you've visited and they come to life very quickly, see? And so you might have a memory that you want to revisit. And what's cool about that is as you find things, you can get back there. So again, everything is all right there on the map. And when you tap, you're going to see a particular location, right? Not a very good one there. Let's get something a little bit better. There we go. Let's go here. There we go. Cool. And so I remember that we can visit all these places and see it looks it up. So that was a shopping mall we went to. And I remember there was an Apple store. So I need to get back there and grab something. So again, if I just tap the Photo Explorer, I can see that on the web. And it's going to drop me right there. And there we are. That was where that wall was that I needed to get back to. And you can see everything. And remember, a lot of times with Google, you could actually jump in and see things like other photos from that area. So if you want to do some virtual scouting, or you could drop into a 3D view, you could find a place to go have lunch or dinner. And again, when you tap, you're going to get all that information and it's all right there. So you can use the information in your photos to trigger a memory and then look something up.
Nice. All right, well, we have a question here in the Q&A from John, and he's asking about adding a device and adding his wife's iPhone.
Yep.
So the best way to do that is, I think JC is in the process of typing an answer as well, but you're going to want to install Mylio Photos on our phone. You're going to log in using your account credentials. So whatever email address and password you use to create your account, if you're going to share the account, you're going to log in with the same credentials on her phone. You'll be prompted to see if you want to add pictures from her camera roll. You can go ahead and just hit yes. That's going to create a separate folder in your Apple Photos folder on your computer.
Or your Android one. Or your Android one.
Or your Android one. That's true. Well, he did say iPhone. So.
Okay. So one little gotcha there. If you guys are on the same iCloud account, you're already bringing in her photos. But if you're using separate iCloud accounts, then it would bring them in as separate folders.
Exactly. So you don't have to worry about duplicates. Mylio keeps all that stuff straight. It's going to let her view all the pictures in your library on her phone as well.
Just make sure you view as a container there so you can see the separate folders when you step in.
Exactly.
And I added the section of the manual that explains step by step how to do this too. So John, if you look at the answer I sent you, you have that link there.
Awesome. Thank you, JC.
Of course.
Let's see, what other tidbits do we want to share? We're getting close to time. I think we've got about 15 more minutes.
I just wanted to point out that there's a background utility that's installed now for Mac and Windows that will launch Mylio when you log into your computer. And we strongly suggest you let this run because it will allow your computers to background sync. So if you want to manually enable this, if it's not running, if you're an existing customer and it's not turned on because of your preferences, you'll just go to the General tab and you'll want to flip the switch for Launch Mylio Photos at login, and then Quit App on Close, you're going to want to disable. So what that does is it launches Mylio in the background, but doesn't show you the user interface or anything in the foreground. And Mylio will be syncing in the background. So all your devices that are connected and running can see each other. So if you're using a cloud provider or your other applications, one thing to point out with mobile devices is that we don't have permission to run in the background like that. It's something that we've applied for. So hopefully that'll happen in the future. But what you can do is this. If you are using your mobile devices, there's a couple things you could do. First off, make sure you go and get to something like your actual sync settings so you can see what's going on. So you can go ahead and navigate and take a look at your activity, or you can go into your devices and kind of see what's going on with your devices. You can see under sync here, there is a setting that you can adjust. And so this is going to allow you to prevent it from going to sleep while syncing. So under sync here, this is where you can control things and make sure that syncing is turned on, decide if you want to sync using cellular data or not. And then I'm forgetting the sleep. Is that under general, guys, where it doesn't go to sleep when it's syncing? I know we just moved it, but we haven't released that yet. Maybe it's
I don't
advanced.
remember where it was moved. Maybe JC does. I'd have to
Yeah,
poke around.
Yeah, we haven't moved it yet. JC, remember where we tell it not to go to sleep while syncing?
Everybody, give me a minute.
Yep, no problem. See, we just cleaned these up, but we haven't released it yet. So I've immediately forgotten where they are the rest of the time. But that's going to allow you to run that, and it will keep it from going to sleep while you're running the application. And so plug the app
It's under
in.
general, Rich.
It's under general. I just missed it. Of course I did. So settings, general, and there we go.
The problem,
Prevent
Rich,
sleep.
is that you're in developer mode, which changes your settings. So
No problem. But it's still here. Prevent sleep
it's
when batteries
definitely
are there.
Yep.
And so this means that your device won't go to sleep as long as it has 40% battery. I suggest you plug the device in and then just leave the screen open. And then you can also go in and just dim your screen like that, so it's not going to bake your screen all the time. Now, I'm sharing my screen with Zoom, so you didn't see it actually change, but on my display itself, it went completely dark. And so Mylio is just running in the background, and I can leave my device plugged in, and it's going to continue to sync. Now, my iPad only needs 3 files, but my iPad has some files that some of my Cloud Vaults need. So I'm going to let that plug in, and I see I have a vault that I need to bring online that will also need those backups. So remember, the dashboard can tell you which devices need things. So I see, for example, that the iPad has files that it wants to send. And if I look down here, I see that it's the vaults that need those files. So I just need to make sure that I turn those vaults back on so they can start backing everything up. Okay, so that's an easy thing to enable. And then we talked all about the inbox. You can also access the inbox from other apps on mobile. So for example, here's WhatsApp. And if you get a picture sent with you, you could tap the button and then just choose to share it. And again, specify the Mylio Photos target, and it will drop it right in your inbox. And copy and paste, quite useful. So I think, Angela, we got through the big level there.
Yeah.
I would like to open it up for open questions, and then also hear if there's anything we didn't talk about today that you guys are hoping to see in a future version. Just let us know some of the things on your mind that you'd like to see. And if you have any other questions about what we did do with this update, it's a pretty big user update.
I'm not seeing any questions right now in the chat or in the Q&A. So folks, if you have more questions, please feel free to pop those there. One thing we didn't show, it's a small thing, but I think it's a very useful thing, is how you can access what's in an album from the info panel.
Sure.
You happen to have that up?
Yeah. So let's say you were looking at some pictures. You can see in the info side if an album contains that. And you can see that it's actually just in this one album, but you can also add it to another album here, right from here. So if you realize that you had a picture that you wanted to share to another album, or make it. And so that's going to give you an overview when you choose something of what album does it appear in. And this picture is in actually 2 albums, my Barcelona album and my Spain album. So I had one that was for the whole country and then one for a particular city. That makes it easy to sort of see that right there in the info panel. So that's a nice little addition there of which album is something in. And then another thing I think we mentioned, but when you're in a view like folder view and you navigate into something and you take a look at an individual photo, pressing the G key is going to take you back to the grid view, which is a nice new shortcut. So I hope you guys find that keyboard shortcut useful.
See, Marcos asked if he'll receive a copy of this session. Yes, you'll get an email with a link to the recording, and it will also be posted in our community. So if you haven't yet joined the community, you can find us at community.mylio.com, or just go to the help menu and say join our community. There's a lot of great resources there for additional courses and education. It's one of the first places we post information about new and upcoming features. You can post photos. JC and I hang out there all the time. Rich is there quite a lot, and we're always happy to help if you come across something that you're a little confused about. So
yeah, I'd really recommend you take a look, for example, at the Mylio Photos Fundamentals. You're also seeing a secret course because I'm logged in, but that'll be coming soon. So there's your sneak peek about scanning and organizing. But I just wrote a tutorial, for example, all about making a holiday letter. And for those of you that want to put together a end of the year letter, and it talks all about using some of these tools, like starting in all photos tools. Then I applied a filter and I said, show me the pictures for this year. Then I filtered by person and just dropped in my immediate family members, which gave me a view of all of our pictures that had my family in it from the year. Then I selected all of those and just dropped them into an album, which was an easy way to organize. Then I reviewed the album and I used the quick review mode and simply used picks and reject flags. And then when I was all done, I just filtered it by picks and was able to narrow it down and was able to get that down from about 900 photos of my family down to about 20 that we want to put into our holiday update. And so it's a great, easy way to clean it up. So I put that article together recently that kind of shows you how to use all of these culling and organization tools we talked about today with an actual purpose-driven thing to really organize your pictures of just your family from the year, for example. So you could check out that tutorial. It says how to put a letter together. And Angela, there's lots of other tutorials. There's quick video tips up there, all sorts of things, right?
All sorts of good stuff. There's a comment here from Pamela. She said, as far as things that she would like to see in Mylio Photos as a way to reorganize and customize the info panel. That is a great suggestion. If you have feature requests, we actually have a place where you can post those. If you go to forum.mylio.com, since you have a browser up, if you want to go there, there is a section specifically for feature requests. And that allows other users to vote on things that they would like to see. And it's also very closely watched by our product team. So this is where we go when we're like, okay, what are our customers looking for? This is one of our main sources for ideas. So I encourage you to post any changes you'd like to see in the app here. That's the best place to get them paid attention to.
Yep. And we take a look and see what's getting votes as well as lots of comments. And that helps. Now, some things are hard to do, some are easy. We are actually in the process right now of updating the info panel and a few other things, but making those reorganizable is a little bit more difficult. But you are going to see that it's going to be very easy to open and close the different sections so you can keep things minimized. And we're also decluttering it a bit. And so you'll see some improvements to that later in the spring.
Awesome.
Any other questions or things before we wrap up?
I'm not seeing anything else, so we're going to go ahead and put out a last call. And if you guys have any other questions beyond this webinar, you're always welcome to reach us in the community. We have a group in there that's called Mylio Photos Quick Questions. That's a great place to post those types of questions if you come across something that's confusing you. Or if you just want to say hi to the Mylio Photos team, Rich, JC, and I are all there. So feel free to tag us and we'll get back to you. But I am not seeing any other questions. Pamela, I'm glad you're looking forward to the updates. We are always working on the software and doing our best to make it the best it can be.